Too much racket over there. What's going on, everybody? Look, 3 of the 600s and 2 of them don't work because that stupid valve that I showed you, if you've been watching, I was on actually that Tierra right there, and I showed you the valve and what was wrong with it. But today we're not going to mess with those. I will film it when they pull the cowlings off to replace that valve again. But today we are working on a Regal. Pretty sure it's a 6-liter. I've been thrown into the mix on this one, so just watch my intro and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so we're in a 28 Regal. This has a V8 380 horse 6-liter Volvo Penta, and this actually was in episode 85 or so, I think. We had a fuel smell coming from this thing, and it turns out one of the injectors was leaking, and we wanted to make sure they didn't have water in it or anything, so one of our other guys here tore it apart, and now he's not here because he had to have surgery. No big deal, but I'm tasked to put it back together. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I just pulled all the rags off it. It was all covered up, but we got the head off this one side, the starboard side here. I think he was checking because the back 2 holes here had water in the going into where the injectors feed, which are directly injected right here. I'll show you the head in the shop. But it looks like everything's good. We got no water intrusion. Everything looks clean. I'll run in the shop. I'll show you the rest of the stuff here. But first, take a look at what we have here. The lifter's in the bag for us. He's got everything all labeled perfectly. So it shouldn't be too big of a task to do, but it's gonna take a little time. And the valve cover. Let's run in the shop. All right, so here is our head. If you look, you got no water intrusion or anything. Everything looks good. Some big old valves in her. Here's our injectors. Looks like right there is our direct injection spot. I've already replaced these back injectors right here. See, they're not painted like the rest of them. See how they got paint on them? That one's brand new. We also got a new head gasket, new exhaust gaskets. We got our manual so I can check our torque spec for our heads here. And brand new head bolts. So let me get all this surface cleaned up. We'll get the other side cleaned up and we'll torque our head on there first. All right, we're all wiped down. We got our head wiped down. We got our block wiped down. Let's grab our gasket. Stick this on first. That's nice of them. It says front. There we go. All right, now let's set our head down on here. All right, head's on. Let's put some bolts on it. Here's our sequence. 22 foot-pounds, 90 degrees, and then 70 degrees afterwards. All right, we got all of our bolts in. Now let's do our torque sequence here. First set is 22 foot-pounds. Next one down here. Now let me finish torquing all these down. And we'll move on to putting our lifters and rocker arms in here. All right, we got all of our 10 bolts torqued down. Now this hole right there is where our push rod goes. And we'll go right to our rocker arm right here. Go right down in our holes here. All right, so we got all 8 in here. Now let's get our rocker arms back on here. Let's hope you label these 1 to 8 that way and not 1 to 8 this way, because we're going to start with number 1 right here. Look at that fancy little guy. Pretty nice. Definitely different than the old school way to do it. Rocks back and forth off this little race here. It's kind of cool. This is the first time I've actually put one of these 6-liters together. Unfortunately, I didn't get to take it apart, so we're kind of winging it here, putting it back together. We'll get the torque spec for these. Let me get the rest of them on there. We'll torque these down. We get all of our rocker arms in here. Just got to torque it to, looks like 22 foot-pounds. You also have to have the motor on top dead center, number 1, which would be this cylinder here, which we are on. Now you tighten all your exhaust, then you turn it 180 degrees, and then you do your intake valves. So let me do that real quick. We can put our valve cover back on. All right, we got all of our bolts torqued down. It's actually lunchtime, so when I come back, I'm going to organize all my parts, get them all laid out, and I'll take the power probe and we'll shoot it right to our starter right here, and we can watch our valve train move. We'll crank it and see what, make sure all this stuff's doing what it's supposed to. So let's just cut to everything being organized. Ooh, before we take lunch, let's take a look at the V12 taken apart here. So there's that valve that I was talking about. It's got heat shrink or something over it now, like that's gonna help it not leak all over. It looks about the same as all the rest, just big giant 2 V6s on top of each other.
And then look at the starboard, you can see the difference of the valves.
Oh, this one, yeah.
The starboard engine has the old style still.
So this is the new one right here? Or no, that one's the new.
That's the old one over
This is
there.
the new one.
New one's got the heat shrink.
So these are the new style.
And the old one has the, you can see where they heat seam them together.
So there's the old style right there, where they're seamed.
That little seam is
So we're not changing this one, we're just gonna change these two?
We're waiting on the other one. We didn't have the other one.
We didn't have it, okay.
They're on back order. That's like their first part recalled.
V12, that's #1 recall. It's not good for a $2 million boat, huh? You can see where it's littering all down on the intake on the one side for sure. Look at that. They pop open, they spray all over. Not good, Mercury. Not a good start. All right, we are back and we are organized. Got all of our stuff out here. I'm not sure what some of this stuff goes to. That's an injector rail puller there. Looks like some parts, I guess. We'll just keep putting these in until we don't have anything left. First, let's hook our power probe up and crank this over. We can watch the valves move and make sure they're doing what they should. All right, we got our starter wire off. Let's get some power to our starter here and watch these crank. Looking good. I can already start to see oil starting to come up through our lifters here. Double check our torque and we'll get our cover on. Plug our starter wire back in here. Might want to do that now because I forget about that. So you don't crank when I turn the key. I'll be like, what did I do? Got our valve cover cleaned off here. Let's get it in place. It's only 10 foot-pounds of torque for these valve cover screws here. Starting to look like a motor again. All right, our final valve cover bolt. Torque down. Now let's put our high pressure fuel pump on here. Yeah, because this thing's direct injected, I got an extra regulator slash pump here. Because normally you would just have this VST right here with the 2 fuel pumps, but because we have a different style fuel injection system, you gotta have that 500 or 600 psi fuel pressure, and that's what this creates. It's pretty cool too because you can actually look at the fuel pressure through the computer. Got a sensor for it right here. There's the metal gasket so we can reuse it. This goes in our hole here. I'm going to put all the wires on as we go, but we'll do that after we get most of our main components on here. Let me check the torque spec. We'll get this bolted down and we'll start putting our injector rails on here. It looks like that hose goes there. Yeah, that's our fuel in, and it ends up coming out here. It's going to split to our rails here. We have some puzzle pieces right here. We'll try to figure out where they end up. All right, now we have our high pressure fuel pump in place. I'm going to guess that this piece goes right here. Somehow splits the rails right here. Not sure exactly how it fits in here, but we're going to find out. So it fits like that, and then it goes right here, and this thing is turned like that. It grabs our injectors on each side, our rails on each side right here and here. So let's just mock this up first. We'll put it all in place and see if that's what that's how it goes. Let me put our fuel line on here too. Looks like that rides underneath everything. Here she goes. It looks like it fits right along that side there. It's pretty tight. It only fits one way. Now let me spray some silicone down in our injector holes here because they seat all the way down in there. Already replaced these O-rings here, and I replaced these two that came with the injectors. And we got new injectors on both back sides. It looks like the water got in there and they started leaking fuel afterwards. Right here, I'm not sure if it's dripping from down here maybe through this hatch. But we'll spray some corrosion block and everything to try to slow that down if it's going to keep trying to do that. Get some silicone spray all of our holes. Already cleaned all this out real good. Alright, so I'm going to guess that our connector goes in the back, so this will be our port side rail right here. Make sure they get all down in the hole good. We're just going to put all this in by hand first, just make sure it all lines up. Oh, right away, that's not the right side. It goes on the starboard side. Fuel connector is not going to go right there. So good thing I didn't seat it all the way down. Take it back out and switch sides so they line up to our connector here. Well, I was wrong again. This is actually backwards. So I'm going to flip this over this way. Then our connector will be on the right side, because our plugs do not fit up here. So this is, I had it right the first time, I just had this bracket wrong. It happens. Well, third time's a charm. Let's get this in, put our bracket on right, put our other rail in, so we can get everything lined up, and then we'll tighten it all down. Take this one. Right there, that looks a lot better. I'm not going to put that bolt in because it's got a little bit of height because our rails aren't all the way down, so we'll do that one last. We'll get our rails seated first. Well, let me get all this seated, and then we'll move on to the next part of it, which I think is installing the intake over the top of this here. Well, we got all of our lines on, everything's connected, fuel rail's good here, got all our connections in the back, even put our main motor connection on that. That was connected to our head stud right here. So now, there's a cover that goes over this. If I did everything right here, it should fit. Let's see. This goes over fuel pump. Should just sit down in here. Like a glove. I'm not sure what that's for, maybe to quiet down the injectors or protect all this stuff from under the intake. So here's the bottom of our intake, also reusable gaskets here. The top of it, it's a plastic plenum style. This would be the back of it, because our throttle body connects right here. A quick wipe down, make sure everything is clean. Now let's slap it in there. Get everything out of the way. She's not gonna go home. I double check, make sure nothing's in the way. Everything looks good. Now we can tighten our bolts down to torque spec here. For a second, I thought it just said tighten intake manifold bolts until snug. Now you turn the page. And there's our torque specs right there. Final 89 inch-pounds. It says connect your PVC hose, which is here, down to our intake, which is right there. You also got VST vent hose right here. But in order to put this hose on, I actually got to reinstall the VST here. I got it loose because I think it was connected to the head on the one side, so I'm not gonna be able to film this. It's literally just 4 bolts. And the bolt that holds our water pump bracket on here. That's it. You can see the hole, there's the VST right there. So when we get this snugged up, I'll get my intake bolts snugged up, and we'll continue on. Alright, our VST is on. We can hook our line up. Really doesn't matter at this point. I gotta clean up here because I've been tasked to go help someone else. No big deal. I'm actually kind of clean this up for today. Typically I can get most of this stuff done in one day, but I get pulled in a lot of directions when I'm here in the yard. Kind of why I like being on the road, nobody bugs me. Anyway, that being said, that'll be all for part 1 here. Only part 2, we'll get the rest of it back together and get it running. As always, I appreciate everybody watching, and I will see you next time. Later. We just got a 380 Boston Whaler on trade. It's a pretty cool boat.